There's a scene in The Sopranos where a man explains why a lot of Italians can't stand Christopher Columbus. He's the only person at that table who actually grew up in Italy. Everyone else there calls themselves Italian too, and not one of them has any idea what he's talking about. Watch that scene closely, and the whole show cracks open. People remember The Sopranos as a mafia epic. Underneath the guns and the gabagool, it was running a much quieter, much more uncomfortable experiment on what happens to people when the identity they perform has almost nothing left underneath it. Season 4, Episode 3. It aired in 2002, and it's called Christopher. It's Columbus Day, and the news is full of protests. Native American activists are protesting the Columbus Day parade. They're calling Columbus a slave trader, a colonizer, a man who left mass death behind him. And the crew is furious. Bobby reads the news out loud outside the pork store. Silvio takes it personally. To him, an attack on Columbus is an attack on every Italian. That outrage drives the whole episode. These men treat their Italian identity as the most solid thing about them. The thing they'd fight for, the thing they'd bleed for. And the show spends the next hour quietly proving the thing isn't really there. Once you catch that move, you start seeing it everywhere in the series. Watch how the scene actually plays. The crew is genuinely outraged on Columbus's behalf, while they sit around on folding chairs outside a butcher shop with nothing better to do. It's one of the funniest stretches in the series, and the comedy is doing real work. At first, Furio goes right along with it. Then he lets something slip. He, the one man there who actually grew up in Italy, has no use for Columbus. Columbus was from Genoa in the north, and the north, historically, was the wealthy part. The people who looked down on the poor south that these men's own families came from. What he hands them is an entire history of class and regional contempt, and it's completely invisible to everyone at that table. Here's the joke the show is too smart to say out loud. These men will go to war for a heritage they could not pass a basic quiz on, and the episode keeps turning the screw. Ralph threatens the protest leader by saying he'll expose that Iron Eyes Cody, the crying Indian from the old anti-littering ad, the most famous Native American face in America, was actually the son of Sicilian immigrants. That part is true in real life. Iron Eyes Cody was Italian American. So now we've got Italian Americans defending a northern Italian they'd personally despise by threatening to out a fake Indian who was secretly one of them. And then the capper, the casino boss they're working, Chief Doug Smith, a man about as Native American as his name, shrugs the whole feud off. Most Native people, he says, don't even care. It's like finding out James Caan isn't Italian. James Caan, the actor who played Sonny Corleone, the most Italian gangster in movie history, not actually Italian. Everyone in this episode is gripping a bloodline for leverage. Furio is the control group, the one person who genuinely carries the culture, watching his own crew defend a costume. Now go back 2 seasons to an episode called Commendatory. Tony, Polly, and Christopher fly to Naples on business. This is supposed to be the homecoming, the motherland. It goes badly in the quietest possible way. Tony calls Carmela from Italy, and the call is as flat as the trip. He tells her the food is okay, lots of fish. Sit with that. Naples is right on the water. For centuries it was the capital of its own kingdom, with a cuisine built around the sea. Tony flew to the heart of the place he calls his soul, and was let down that it didn't taste like a red sauce joint back in Jersey. Polly has it worse. Polly went looking for a hero's welcome, and came home unable to admit, even to himself, that Italy disappointed him at every turn. He can't stand the food. In Naples, he asks for macaroni and gravy. The locals treat him like exactly what he is, a tourist. There's a now famous moment where Polly toasts a stern old man at a cafe with the word he's been collecting all trip, commendatory. Commendatory. And the man just looks at him and turns away. That old man is played by David Chase, the creator of the show, personally, on camera, denying Polly the recognition he came 3,000 miles to get. And Christopher spends the entire pilgrimage to the motherland strung out in a hotel room and barely sees the country at all. There's a deeper layer under all of this. The food they defend so hard back home is itself a kind of remix. The great wave of Italian immigration to America came mostly from the poor South. And in America, cheap meat and canned tomatoes reshaped that peasant cooking into the red sauce cuisine we now picture as ancient and unchanging. So when these men go to the mattresses for their heritage, the heritage had already been rewritten in transit. They're guarding a copy and calling it the original. So here's the real question. Why grip this hard onto something they don't actually have? The show's answer is bleak. and it's bigger than the mafia. There's a hole in the plain American identity. Just American doesn't feel like enough. So people reach for a second one, a heritage, a homeland, a tribe. Something that makes them more than the guy who grew up in a Jersey suburb. They want the meaning without the membership. And this isn't only an Italian story, it's the immigrant story across the board. The first generation freezes the old country at the exact moment they left it, and teaches their kids that frozen version forever, while the actual country moves on without them. But Tony isn't first generation, he's generations deep. The old country is barely even a rumor to him. The trip to Naples is treated as a pilgrimage precisely because he's so cut off from it, and he clings to it harder than almost anyone, which is what makes it tragic instead of just funny. There's one more reason, and it's the quietest one. The heritage hands every man at that table a script. It tells him exactly who he is and where he stands. Knowing your place is its own kind of comfort. Watch how often a character gets a genuine chance to leave that world, and can't. Vito Spatafore got the cleanest exit anyone on the show ever got. Outed and marked for death, he ran to a small town in New Hampshire, built a quiet life, found a man who loved him, found something close to peace. And he came back to Jersey, back to a world that had already marked him for death. It got him killed. He could not survive outside the structure. They all chafe against how they live, and almost none of them can live any other way. Now look at what the show keeps telling you actually hollowed the heritage out. Money. Go back to the very first season. Polly and Big Pussy are sitting in a slick coffee place, and Polly is stewing. Italians invented espresso and cappuccino, he says, and now everyone else is getting rich off it. It's not even about the money, he says. It's a pride thing. Then he steals the espresso machine on his way out, like he can take the culture back one appliance at a time. The series keeps mining this. Across the whole show, the mob looks less like a brotherhood and more like a business. Men whose main remaining tie to each other is the next envelope of cash. And nobody embodies that drift more than Tony. Tony grew up downtown, in a crowded old Newark neighborhood. He ended up in a big suburban house set back behind the trees, with a pool out back. Generation by generation, the family got richer, safer, more comfortable, and less Italian. And the crew looks down on the watered-down, half-American Medigans, even while they live the most assimilated lives on the show. Tony's most of all. That's the whole tragic engine. The only variable left is how much of yourself you'll sell to keep the house. And now the title. Christopher. The name itself means Christ bearer, the one who carries Christ. The whole episode runs on grievance, on who gets to be the bigger victim. The Italians, the Native Americans, everyone clutching their wound. And there's one tiny scene that detonates the rest. AJ, Tony's teenage son, tells his father that Columbus was a slave trader. It's in his history book, and Tony's answer is perfect. So you finally read a book, and it's bullshit. Look at what just happened. Handed an inconvenient truth about a hero, Tony just waves it away. The history doesn't matter to him, because the myth is useful to who he wants to be. That same reflex runs his entire life. Every terrible thing he does for the family gets the same treatment, glanced at sideways, justified, filed away. Here's the whole show in one breath. The grief over a lost heritage is the alibi. They mourn a culture they personally traded for money and comfort, and the mourning is what lets them never look straight at what they became. And the final wink? This episode was written by Michael Imperioli, the actor who plays Christopher Moltisanti. Even the name in the title is wearing a borrowed identity. The Sopranos is a horror story about assimilation, where nobody in it ever notices the body. Go back to that first scene. One man who actually grew up in Italy, explaining a heritage to a table full of men who would die for the word and couldn't define it. The show put its entire thesis in that one exchange and let you laugh at it. So here's my question for you. What's the identity you perform that you've never really lived? And what would your Furio say if he sat down across from you? Put it in the comments. The most honest answer in there gets pinned to the top.